They told me I'd have my own room, my own bathroom, even a little garden to take care of. "You'll be part of the family," the woman said over the phone. Her name was Teresa, and her voice was warm, almost too warm. I wanted to believe her. I needed the job. I had crossed the border 2 weeks earlier and hadn't slept properly since. When someone offers you safety, you don't ask too many questions. They picked me up in a gray pickup at the edge of a gas station near the Arizona border. Teresa was older, short, with hair the color of cigarette smoke. Her husband, Mike, didn't say much, just nodded when she introduced me as our new helper. They had me sit in the back. I noticed the windows were tinted darker than normal, but I didn't think much of it. I just stared out the front windshield, trying to catch a signal on my phone. Nothing. Dead zone. The house was far from town, too far. The dirt road stretched for miles, lined with dry trees and rusted fences. I asked if there was a bus stop nearby, maybe a neighbor. Teresa laughed. "You won't need any of that out here. We're off the grid. No traffic, no noise. You'll love it." I smiled weakly and nodded. But something about the silence pressed into my chest. The house was small, but neat. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with plastic-covered couches. Everything felt staged, like a model home no one really lived in. Mike carried my bag inside without saying a word. I tried to thank him, but he just walked past me, his boots loud on the wooden floor. The first night, I was too tired to notice much. I showered, changed, and fell asleep on top of the covers. The next morning, I woke to Teresa standing in the doorway with a cup of tea. "Chamomile," she said. "Good for nerves." I hadn't told her I was nervous. I drank it anyway. They gave me chores. Cleaning, cooking, some yard work. It wasn't much, but they were strict about the backyard. "Don't go past the shed," Teresa warned. "The ground's uneven. Dangerous." I nodded again, always nodding, always agreeing. 3 days in, I noticed Mike watching me from the window. Not just watching, studying. When I looked at him, he didn't turn away. He just stood there, eyes locked on me, his hand resting on the curtain like he forgot to let it fall. That night, I locked my door. The next morning, the lock was broken. Teresa blamed the humidity. I started hiding my phone in different places. I knew they checked my room. I'd come back from sweeping the porch and find my pillow moved, my bag unzipped. The phone still had no service, but I used the camera to take pictures of Teresa, of Mike, of the house, of the shed. That shed was always locked. A thick chain over the handle, rusted but solid. I asked what was inside. "Old tools," Mike finally spoke. "Nothing for you." His voice was low, rough like gravel. It stayed in my head for hours. One afternoon, while hanging laundry, I noticed something behind the shed. A small patch of dirt, darker than the rest, like it had been turned recently. I walked toward it. The air felt heavier there. Flies buzzed low. I bent down and touched the soil. It was soft, damp, too damp for the desert. "Marisol!" Teresa's voice cracked through the air. I jumped. She was at the porch, her face pale. Inside, now. I didn't argue, but I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I pretended to be sick. Teresa brought me soup. I didn't eat it. I poured it down the sink when she left. My stomach growled, but my fear was louder. I waited until they both went out, Mike to get gas, Teresa to the church she claimed to attend. Then I made my move. I went to the shed. The chain was gone. Maybe they forgot, or maybe they wanted me to look. Either way, the door creaked open. Inside, it smelled like old gasoline and mold. Tools lined the wall, rusty shovels, a broken lawnmower, jars of nails, and in the corner, a plastic tarp rolled tight, tied with twine. I stepped closer. My hands trembled. I didn't want to know, but I had to. I pulled the tarp back just enough to see fabric, then hair, then a face. A woman, young, her eyes wide open, mouth too. I stumbled back, hit the shelf, knocked over a can of paint. The sound echoed. I froze, waited. Nothing. I ran to the house, grabbed my phone, snapped the clearest picture I could, and typed the only thing I could think to text. Help. Woman buried behind shed. Send police. Then I climbed onto the roof, held the phone high, praying for a single bar. A text sent. The little icon spun, failed. I was about to try again when I heard tires on gravel. They were back. I hit the ground hard and tasted blood in my mouth. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. I just crawled behind the shed as fast as I could, dragging my body over the dirt while my ankle throbbed like it had snapped in two. I could hear Mike shouting inside the house. Teresa answered with something sharp. Then silence. That silence terrified me more than the yelling. I pulled myself behind a stack of old wood and pressed my back against the wall. My heart beat so loud I thought it would give me away. I held my phone in one hand and stared at the cracked screen. No signal. I tapped it again and again, like I could will a connection to appear. Nothing. Just a blinking battery icon slowly turning red. A shadow passed the window. Boots thudded against the porch. The screen door creaked open, then slammed shut. She's not here, Mike growled. She's not in the house. Teresa replied, her voice flat. Then she's seen it. My breath caught. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I had seen it, and they knew. I stayed crouched behind that shed until the sun dipped behind the hills. The air cooled fast, and every sound made me jump. I waited until darkness swallowed everything. Then I moved. Slowly. Quietly. I limped around the shed, keeping low, eyes scanning for light. There were none. The house was dark. Too dark, like they were waiting inside, listening. I didn't go back. I ran. Through the dry brush and across the gravel road, ignoring the pain in my leg. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. My lungs burned, my foot bled, but I kept running until I collapsed near a fence with barbed wire. I stayed there, curled up in the dirt, until the stars began to fade. In the morning, I followed the fence line until I found a mailbox, rusted, tilted, but real. I knocked on the door of the nearest house, a faded green trailer. An old man answered. His face was worn and sunburnt, but his eyes weren't cruel. "Help," I whispered. "Please." He looked me over for a long moment, then opened the door wider. "Inside, quick." He didn't ask questions, just gave me water and a towel. I told him pieces of the story, enough to make him pale. He nodded like he'd heard it before. "You're not the first to come running down that road," he said, "but you're the first to come back alive." He let me use his landline. I called a woman from the shelter my aunt once told me about. She answered. I didn't even finish the first sentence before she said, "We're coming." I waited in the old man's living room for 2 hours until they arrived in an unmarked van. No logos, just soft voices and warm blankets. They took me to a safe house in Tucson. I gave them the photo I had taken, the girl's face, the tarp, the shed. The officer who came to interview me went pale when he saw it. "We've heard stories about that place," he said, "but we never had proof." They opened an investigation the next day. When the police reached the house, it was empty. The rooms were scrubbed clean. The tools were gone. The tarp was gone. Even the shed had been torn down. But they found the grave, or what was left of it. Inside were the bones of 3 women. One matched a missing persons report from Nevada, one from Texas. The third was never identified, but none of them were the girl in my photo. That girl was still out there, maybe alive, maybe not. Mike and Teresa had vanished. Their names weren't real. Their IDs were fakes. No bank accounts, no paper trail, nothing. Like ghosts. Like they had done this before. I was placed under protection. New name, new location. I moved into a small apartment above a grocery store, started working cleaning shifts at night and therapy during the day. I barely slept. Every knock on the door made me flinch. Every car that slowed outside made me freeze. I knew they were gone, but I didn't feel safe. Not really. Then one night, someone left an envelope under my door. No name, just a note inside. "You should have stayed quiet." I brought it to the police. They said it was probably a prank, but I knew it wasn't. I changed apartments the next day, changed my number again, cut my hair short, wore sunglasses even indoors. I was tired of being watched, tired of being hunted. That's when I decided to speak louder. I told my full story to a journalist from Phoenix who specialized in immigrant abuse cases. She listened, she cried, she published everything, the shed, the photo, the grave, the missing girls. It went viral. And that's when other women started reaching out. One had worked for a woman named Teresa in New Mexico. Another had seen Mike at a gas station in Utah. One had escaped from a house that matched my description almost exactly. We started connecting the dots. And we realized this wasn't about me. This was a system, a pattern, and I had cracked it open. The calls kept coming. Every week, another woman, another story. Same pattern, promised a job, isolated, stripped of ID, manipulated. Some escaped, some didn't. One sent me a voice message from a shelter in Oregon. Her voice trembled as she said, "I thought I was crazy. Then I saw your story." I saved that message, played it when I needed strength, when the nightmares came back. The investigation grew. Journalists connected the cases. Advocates built a map. Different states, different names, same methods. The house I'd escaped from had changed hands 6 times in 7 years. Always cash buyers, always fake names, always the same modifications. Lockable rooms, soundproofed sheds, no neighbors too close. The authorities called it a trafficking ring. I called it a hunting ground. One day the police showed up at the safe house with an update. They had arrested someone in Nevada who matched Mike's description, but it wasn't him. Just another ghost in their web. A handler, disposable. But he had names. One of them matched a report from a woman who disappeared in 2019. Another matched the alias Teresa once used. Still no trace of her. But I knew she was watching, because the threats didn't stop. I got emails with no return address, photos of me walking to work, one of my apartment window. Once, someone slipped a torn piece of my childhood photo under my door. I started carrying pepper spray, a knife. I never walked the same route twice, but I kept going. I refused to vanish like the others. Then the documentary offer came. A production company wanted to tell the full story, mine and the others. I said no at first. I was scared. But then I saw the wall of women, their faces, their names, some missing, some buried, some still alive but broken. And I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about truth. We filmed in secret, voice actors, blurred faces, every scene double-checked by lawyers. When it aired, it exploded. National attention, political pressure, hotlines flooded with calls, hidden victims started stepping out of the shadows. Some of the traffickers were caught, not all, never all, but enough to start breaking the system. I became a name people recognized, not famous, just known. The girl who escaped. The girl who told the truth. I got speaking requests, interviews, panels. I said no to most. I wasn't a hero, I wasn't healed. I still jumped at loud noises, still checked under my bed, still avoided mirrors at night. But I was alive, and that had to count for something. One night, after a talk at a college campus, a girl approached me in the hallway. She looked 19, eyes wide, hands trembling. She didn't say anything, just pulled out a photo. It was Teresa, younger, smiling, with the girl beside her. "She's my aunt," the girl whispered. She raised me. I felt the floor tilt. She said she hadn't seen her in years, that she'd disappeared after a business fell apart. The girl didn't know what to believe, but when she saw the documentary, she recognized the smile, the gestures, the voice. She asked me if it could be true. I didn't know what to say, but I gave her a number to call, people who could help, who could protect her. I watched her walk away, clutching the photo like it was a question she no longer wanted answered. That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not out of fear, out of grief, out of rage, out of exhaustion, and out of something else. Relief. Because I was still here. Because the story didn't end with me. It began with me. Now every time I walk past a girl cleaning a restaurant window or taking out trash behind a hotel, I wonder what story she carries. What trap she escaped or hasn't yet. And I hope my voice somehow reaches her, even if she never hears my name. Because the grave in the backyard wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and I won't stop digging. Sometimes, the most dangerous lies wear friendly faces. If someone promised you safety but now you feel trapped, listen to that voice inside. You're not alone. There's always a way out, and when you make it, tell your story. Someone out there is waiting to hear it.